One of the most common questions new searchers ask is how were the previous 3 casks found? And that's a good question, right? The easiest way to understand how a puzzle works is if some of them have been solved, figuring out how they were solved. Perhaps the rest of them work kind of the same way. And there's not really a comprehensive guide on how the 3 were solved. So let's take a look at them, right? Let's start with Chicago. Chicago was the first cask found. It was found in 1983 by Rob Robel, Eric Gasarowski, Rob's brother Tim, their friend Jason. They were just a group of friends out having an adventure. Rob had found this book and thought, hey, maybe we can solve it. They figured out pretty quickly that there was a cask in Chicago because they noticed a pretty prominent building in Chicago called the Water Tower was featured in the painting. But they didn't know which verse to use. And they even said in some interviews, like finding the right verse was kind of dumb luck. Eventually they found it. The verse starts out where M and B are set in stone. Now back then, Rob and Eric, they got this clue wrong. They thought it was where man and beast are set in stone. There's a statue in Chicago near Grant Park called the Bowman. And it's a man atop a horse on a stone sort of pillar. They thought it was referring to that. We've since found out that it's not. The verse starts at a building called Symphony Hall in Chicago. And on the front of this building are some names of composers. There's Mozart, there's Beethoven, there's Bach, M and B, Mozart and Beethoven. Now we know this is true because when you're standing in front of this building staring at those words, if you turn around behind you, you see directly in your line of sight a fountain called the Fountain of the Great Lakes. And featured on this part of this fountain is featured in the painting. Now it's a direct one-to-one copy. You don't have to use a magnifying glass to see it. It's just right there in front of your eyes. The next line of the verse is, and to Congress R is known, which seems sort of vague. But if you were to walk down the road from Symphony Hall, only a few yards, you would come to a crossroads of Congress Parkway. Now, on your right, as you're standing at Congress Parkway, on your right, you'd see Roosevelt University. And to Congress Parkway, Roosevelt University is known. The next line of the verse is, L sits left, and over his shoulder is the fair folks treasure holder. Now, when you're standing at Congress Parkway and you're looking over at Roosevelt University, right behind you is that Bowman statue we were talking about earlier. It's a one-to-one copy. The statue is in the painting. And as you're staring at the Bowman statue, if you look to your left, you see a giant statue of Abraham Lincoln sitting on a chair atop a big pillar. Over his shoulder is the fair folks treasure holder. Simple as that. Now, Rob and Eric found the seated Lincoln. This is a pretty well-known statue in this area of town. And they went past it as the verse told them. The next line of the verse told them, at the end of 10 by 13 is your clue. So they knew what they were looking for was at the end of 10 by 13. But 10 by 13 what? They got down in this small area of the park and they started using math. They started drawing diagrams and using angles, and they dug holes for months and couldn't find anything. At some point, Tim, Rob Robel's brother, was like, there's 10 trees here and there's 13 trees here. Maybe we should go to the end of it. They got to the end of these 10 by 13 trees and they realized that directly in front of them was an iron fixture box. And to the left was a fence post. Just beyond the fence post was Central Railroad. And they knew they were in the right spot because the fence post that they were looking at was unique and it was in the painting. Just like when they got to the end of the first clue, they turned around and they saw the fountain. They got to the end of the second clue, they turned around and they saw the Bowman. They got to the end of this clue and they saw the fence post. But still, they were left with where to dig. They dug hole after hole after hole and couldn't find the cask. They got to the point where they mailed Byron Price a letter. And they said, hey, we're here. We know the cask is here. We've dug so many holes, but we can't find it. Byron Price wrote him a letter back and said, I don't know why you can't find it. You're right at the right spot. Here's a picture of where I buried it. And he sent them a Polaroid he took right after he dug this hole. They went to this spot. They dug a hole, and guess what? They still didn't find it. It took them getting frustrated and throwing a shovel at the ground. And when they threw that shovel at the ground, a sliver of dirt fell, and there was the cask. Now, we're left with the question, where was that hole? If you ask Rob now, he'll tell you one place. If you ask Eric now, he'll tell you another place. Tim will tell you one place. They all have different stories. They all put the cask in different places. And that's because it's been 40 years. They don't remember. This wasn't a major milestone in their life. This was a bunch of teenagers getting together, having an adventure, and having fun. What we really need to find where they eventually dug this up is a time machine, so we could go back to 1983 and ask them. Luckily for us, we have this.
One time or another, most of us have dreamed of finding some kind of buried treasure. Well, that dream really came true for 3 suburban teenagers who uncovered a buried treasure worth $1,500, and they found it in Grant Park. Now, these young men headed for the park last February after reading a book that's called The Secret. The author of this book had hidden 12 ceramic boxes in various spots around the country, and he planted clues in his book which guided all the young treasure hunters. The hints, which were hidden inside a poem, led them to a spot in Grant Park near the Illinois Central Railroad yard. Well, after digging there on and off for 6 months, they actually found the prize, and the 3 lucky treasure hunters are here with us today, here in the studio. First of all, to my right, Bob Roble, Eric Gazarowski, and David James. And you really did find a treasure. You brought it in for us to see, but there's something more to it than this, isn't there?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes.
What else? What else besides this?
First off, inside the box, there was a key, and it was like a green-colored key, and we have to send it to New York, the author, to let him know that we got the treasure, and then he sends us out an emerald. In the picture, there's an emerald, so that we knew which kind of gem we got, and we should be getting it tomorrow.
Oh, so you have a now this is worth $500, I understand.
Yes,
and the emerald is worth
$1,200.
So you really got a treasure.
Well, yeah.
Now, there's 12 of these, now 11 buried across the country. The odds were that there wasn't even one buried in Illinois. How did you know you had the location?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jake.
There are pictures in the book and verses that go with a certain picture. Now, they don't tell you which picture goes with which verse. You had to match them up and use the clues from each to find the location. And we, almost through sheer luck, we've matched the pictures and the verses, and we've figured out the clues gradually since February.
Now, you were digging for 6 months in Grant Park. The author of the book finally gave you a little bit of assistance right at the very end, didn't he? What happened?
He sent us a picture, and the picture gave us a basic location of where it was. It was buried next to an iron-type fixture box, and we finally went out there when I came back from Colorado. We went out there on a Tuesday, and we were digging around for a bit, and then a friend, he leaned up against the wall and it just fell off, and there it was sitting.
You saw it. All right, I hear you have another one planned. There's 11 more boxes hidden out there somewhere, and you think you know where another one is.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Colorado.
I was working out there. I was out there visiting my father, and he came, and they sent me the picture that would help me, and I used a bunch of maps. And
well, you've narrowed the spot down, haven't you?
The real small area, about 4 blocks.
All right, we might have you back again on 4:30 after you dig up 4 more blocks in Colorado. Good luck to all of you.
Okay, thank you.
Just ahead.
So there you have it. In 1983, shortly after this cask was dug up, the guys went on the news and they told them exactly where they found it. They said that they were leaning up against the wall next to the fixture box, and they dug a hole, and there it was. Now, stories are different. You know, like I said before, if you ask them now, they'll tell you something different. What I tend to trust are the 3 guys who were on the news a week after they dug this thing up. That's who remembers exactly where this thing was. We'll never really know, though, for sure. We'll never be able to put a 5 by 5 inch hole in the ground exactly where they dug that up. We just won't. But we got a general idea. The point of all of this was this verse works in a simple way. You go from point to point to point, and each time you get to a clue in the verse, the painting reinforces that for you. So you know you are precisely in the exact place. Do all of them work this way? Probably not. But it's something to think about. This is how this one was found.